Tonight, I'll be leaving my Tesla Model 3 outside all night, unplugged in minus 36 Celsius, which is minus 33 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm then going to start it up in the morning, drive it to work, let it sit outside for 8 hours, again unplugged, and temperature is pretty much just as cold as this, and then drive it home and see how much battery I actually use and how inefficient or efficient the car ends up being. This is one of the most extreme cold temperatures of the year here in Saskatoon, Canada. And I'm really excited, but also really nervous to see how this goes. It's almost time to bring the car outside to let it deep freeze all night for about 12 hours before I start it up in the morning and see how it goes. My car is a 2024 Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. It's the Highland Refresh. Let's see if the EV can handle it. All right, folks, not excited for this one. Not excited for what I'm about to do to the car, but we're gonna do it. I'll just pull up the weather here on my car screen. And so, yeah, we're bringing it out here at about 10:30. It's minus 31, we're going down to minus 32, minus 33, minus 34, and even minus 35. You know, that's gonna be roughly the time I'm heading to work is 8 to 9 a.m. We're gonna be at minus 35 here, guys. I'm leaving the car unplugged outside all night at these temps, so this is pretty nasty. I'm starting the car off at 80% charge. I'm gonna do a 30-minute preheat tomorrow morning because I don't wanna do any permanent damage to the car, so I'm actually gonna give it a proper preheat. But that's all going to be unplugged. I'm just going to do it from the app. Car's going to start, unlike probably a handful of the cars on my street here. So that's going to be nice. At least my car is going to start. I'm definitely going to let it warm up for a solid 30 minutes so that I don't do any damage to the battery or anything else. And then I'll take some video and see how the car feels, how the car sounds, and how it takes off. I will be comparing the results I get here to my minus 30 video. Of course, this is going to be way worse. And that was 31% use in that video. That was to drive to work, park it for 8 hours at work, drive it home. But I started in my garage that morning versus this one, I'm not starting in the garage. So it's colder, plus car's outside, not in the garage. Plus I'm gonna warm it up for longer. Oh boy, we could hit 40% in one day of driving to work here. So this is about as bad as it gets though. There's not been a colder day than minus 35 ambient temp. This is brutal. But that being said, it's time to bring the car outside. I hope it forgives me after this one. All right, guys, we are outside. Car is parked out here, 80% starting. Let's see what we end up with. All right, so we're at 7:30 in the morning and it is minus 35 out there. Time to start the car up and see how this goes. I'm gonna track the overall usage of battery percent today in kilowatt hours as well as percent. This is gonna be a doozy. All right, guys, we are at minus 34 degrees Celsius. That's about minus 31 degrees Fahrenheit. And it feels like minus 46. Extreme cold warning. Yeah, I'd agree with that. So this being shown, let's start the car up. All right, so the car has been asleep for 8 hours, hasn't woke up and was at 80%. Let's go ahead and click on the car to wake it up here and see what it looks like is happening. All right, so I lost 2% overnight here in Phantom Drain, and interior showing minus 33 on the interior. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll set it to 20 degrees and turn it on and see if it turns on. All right, there we go. It's on and starting to preheat. The car's alive. It didn't die and didn't need a boost. And it was out all night at minus 34 degrees. So let's see how this goes. It's 7:41 in the morning right now. Let's see how long it takes to actually start heating up. This will be really interesting to look at too. In the Tessie app, it's a super cool app that gives more detail about your car than the base Tesla app, and I do recommend it. It shows that I actually do have 80% charge, but that 3% is locked out due to the cold, and once the battery warms up, I will get that 3% back. The app also projects I'll only get 239 kilometers or 149 miles in real-world usage. That is based on my previous week of driving. So only 239 kilometers or 149 miles for 80% of my battery charge during an extreme cold is what I can actually expect. Only been a minute. We are up 6 degrees already, so it's only minus 27 in there. It's getting warm. 4 minutes in and we are already from minus 33 C all the way up to minus 13 C. So it is heating up rapidly in there. I'm actually impressed. It's only been 6 minutes and I'm already in the plus temperatures above freezing. So above 32 Fahrenheit, above 0 degrees Celsius. And 10 minutes in, ambient temperature at 10 Celsius, and that is about 50 Fahrenheit. So I'd say this is a huge success. We'll see if I can actually get in the car. I believe I will, but we will see. All right, guys, no problem. So the car is warm, I'm in, the door handle is fine. That's a problem. We've lost 11% in half an hour of preheating, so holy smokes. Okay, that's a bit of a problem. And the car thinks I'll get to work with about 58%. Keeping in mind, we're at about 69% right now. So yeah, wow, that's gonna be 22% drained by the time I get to work, just to work. That is kind of wild. So what that tells me is we are gonna absolutely destroy the bad result of minus 30, losing 31% parking this thing outside. Now, given I'm preheating it a lot more than I did on that day, but that's because I had the garage, right? When you park outside, you better be preheating the battery, otherwise it's not gonna be happy with you. Yeah, holy cow. So I'm gonna try to get there with 58%. We'll see if we do it. At 56 or 57, I'd be fine with. And then after work, I'm expecting the same result. The game plan is to leave the car sitting outside for 8 hours, maybe get slightly warmer, but this is gonna be brutal. And wow, I'm gonna use like 50% today, aren't I? This is crazy, but I'll update as I go. I have to say the steering wheel definitely feels really stiff. The car feels pretty stiff, but that's expected in temperatures this cold. I've always had that. Definitely no exception today. It is stiff in here. I threw it in chill mode and I'm on my winter tires now. That's an important thing to mention too, is those are things that are different from the last video. I do have to say though, I am nice and warm. It's only set to 19 right now and I think I got to take this bigger jacket off. It's just too warm in here. It's crazy how warm this car gets and stays. So performance of actually keeping you warm in the vehicle, not a problem at all. I love the car for that. After being on the road for a couple minutes, it's already dropped to 57% projected, so 12% projected use now, even after warming up for half an hour. And I'm about to slow down here. I'm assuming we're not gonna get any regen, but let's check. Yeah, definitely no regen there. That's just a white line. Usually it's dark. I'm not even sure what the difference that is, but either way, certainly no regen here. I'll be surprised and it'll be a miracle if I get it at all at any point today. In case anyone's wondering, FSD works just fine here when it's minus 34 Celsius. So yeah, crazy to see numbers like this, but it is what it is. Things are working just fine. Yeah, nothing's fogged up in the car. It is, honestly, I'm pretty impressed. And as always on my channel, we are in 114 kilometers an hour, which is 70 miles an hour on my highway portions of my tests. Current drive stats, bit concerning. We had just got on the highway, so of course it got a little bit worse since I did a lot of accelerating, but this is only for the drive, not including park and preheat, and I'm at 408 watt hours per kilometer. The watt hours per mile will be on screen. Now this is gradually dropping, so this is going to drop substantially, but at this point, holy smokes, I don't know what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for sub 300, obviously, but as soon as you hit 275 watt hours per kilometer, you are double the EPA estimated range. So this is what we're dealing with here in minus 35. Obviously, minus 35 is an extreme temperature, so this happens a handful of times a year, if that. So you can't just bank on that and use that as a reason not to buy the car. And you don't do road trips on days like this, guys. You're not driving 300 kilometers. You're going to work and back. Maybe you're going to the grocery store, which is a couple kilometers. You're not getting too crazy on days like this. So I wouldn't still use it as a reason to not buy the car. After this, I'm going home and the car's staying home. So double the rated range. But guess what? It's still about a third of the price of the gas car. Speaking of saving money on fuel, DroneQuote EV Savings Calculator is an awesome tool to see what you could save by switching to an EV yourself. In this example, I'll use Texas, where the gas price is $2.72 a gallon and electricity price on average is 15 cents per kilowatt hour. In my example, I'm changed from a 2010 Honda Civic, I'll put that in here, and I changed to a 2024 Tesla Model 3 long-range all-wheel drive. So you can see, for the cost of 1 gallon, I can get 64 extra miles in the Tesla. Once you've seen how much you'll save changing to your dream EV, you can also look into getting a free quote for a solar install at your property with DroneQuote by clicking this button right here, Get My Quotes. They work with local solar companies in your area and make sure you get the best price on a solar install. A link to this free calculator by DroneQuote will be at the top of the description or on screen in the form of a QR code. Thank you, DroneQuote, for sponsoring this video. All right, so not even halfway there, and I've lost another projected percent, so now we are down to 56% projected. That's a 24% use one way of my 67 kilometer drive. Now I'm giving it a worst case scenario, but that is substantial energy drain. Normally I use anywhere from 9 to 11% charge to go each direction from work. That is starting in a garage that is insulated, so the worst it ever gets in there is minus 9 Celsius. Oftentimes it's about minus 4, minus 5 on a nicer day, so on not a day as cold as this. But yeah, what that's going to tell us is I'm going to use more than the entire back and forth drain rate that I normally do just to go one way to work. Not to mention preheating the car once I'm done work and then driving home. So I'm thinking we're gonna use like 50%, 51% today. This is crazy. This might be the worst documented range in all of YouTube. Someone show me worse, but this is crazy. I would love to hear in the comments if you guys have seen worse than this. That being said, it still is handling it right. And so We'll see, but as soon as it gets this cold, it just gets brutal in terms of efficiency. Well, of course, we got no regen here, slowing down, and that white line is all just brake pedals. So yeah, halfway into the trip, still 0 regen. Car's now showing minus 35C, so it is not getting any better here, folks. Currently sitting on 60%, so 20% drained here since I parked it last night, and we're still looking at 56%, so at least we got that. It's not draining any further as of now. Current drive, 325 watt hour per kilometer. I'm thinking we might get that to 300 here on this trip, but yeah, holy smokes, this is going to be a 300 plus day, I'm pretty sure. Nice thing is we got the since charge figure here too, so we're going to see how efficient it is while moving, but I'm also going to see the total kilowatt hour drain and the total percent drain at the end of the drive. So that is going to make for some fantastic stats. Getting closer to the end here, but I've lost yet another percent down to 55. So this is the worst I've ever seen it do so far. And when I say the worst I've seen it do, I just mean the worst I've seen the projection do. Although the worst efficiency as well. I've never burned this much percent. We're going to hit 25% burn here from when I was parked to when I get to work, which is only about 34 kilometers. So, whew. This is a bad one, folks. This is going brutally, but it is what it is, and I had to test it out because it's not too often there's a place where you can own a Tesla that's going to get colder than this, especially on a regular basis. So I feel like I'm covering all the bases on the worst case scenario, unplugged overnight situation here on a person who actually has to drive in the morning. So I'm still happy I'm doing the test, and I'm happy the car's handling it, even if it's really, really inefficiently. All right, guys, and somehow we have regen braking. So the car is actually partially regen braking. So that is shocking to see, but I'll take it. That means the battery has somehow warmed up just in time for me to freeze it again for 8 hours and minus 35 while I work. All right, guys, I've made it to work. The results are a lot worse than my minus 30 video when I started in the garage. I'll tell you that now. So I'm at 55%. That is a total of 25% use. Current drive and since charge, I have used 11 kilowatt hours, so still less than $2, which is cool because in the gas vehicle, I was using about $4.50 or so, maybe $5 on a really cold day. So I'm still saving money, technically speaking. Driven 33 kilometers and yeah, 320 watt hour per kilometer. I'll put the watt hour per mile up on screen, but this is brutal. Keep in mind, guys, 137 watt hour per kilometer is the EPA rated. This is something that concerns me. So 13.9% consumed while driving. Of course, that means 10% while idle. That's fine. But 3% more than projection, and I only drove 33 kilometers. So if you're planning to drive a long distance, that is a bit concerning. This graph, this is pretty off, like 2.6% more than expected, and that's with me saving percent on climate. Battery preconditioning, even while driving, it gave me 0.9. I've pretty much never seen that one before, so that's actually a new one. But yeah, this is kind of bad. If you're banking on driving a road trip in a temperature like this, you're losing 3% every 30 kilometers. Like that's concerning. It's always been very accurate for me up until today. So in the really, really cold days, it actually doesn't predict correctly. So that's a good one to note. Increased climate control, tire drag, battery preconditioning, cold cost an extra 1.6. A little bit of wind, not much, honestly. 6K costed a tiny bit. And I went 114, I always will, and it showed 0.1. So nothing there. And even in the meantime, now we're at 54%. So now 26% drained for 33 kilometers. This is a 2024 Tesla Model 3 long range. This is the long range version, folks. All-wheel drive. Minus 33 now. So what's the weather going to look like throughout the day? If I pull up weather graph, you know, it's going to be minus 34 or so for the next few hours, but thank goodness we're going to be warm and right up here to a minus 26C. That is going to be beautiful when it hits that. Maybe I'll actually make it home here today. Jokes aside, guys, of course I'm going to make it home. I expect to use another 10% preconditioning. I expect to use another 15% driving home. I'm going to get home with like 30, 35%, whatever it is. That's bad. I'm not here to pretend that isn't bad. However, it got me to work, it got me back, and the results are so drastically worse in the cold. I cannot overstate that enough. I should make some comparison videos here on a minus 15 day. Same thing, parked outside. I think I will do that. Comment if you want to see that, but same thing, parked outside, how much better it gets. And that's minus 15. That's not a warm day, you guys. That's for Canadian Saskatchewan winter, that's a pretty nice day, honestly, but that's not a warm day by any stretch of the imagination. And I guarantee you the car does so much better in that weather. But yeah, in this ultimate extreme test, I'm hesitant to say I'm impressed because I think I'll get roasted in the comments, but I am kind of impressed. You saw the articles in Chicago, which with all the stuff happening there and the car's freezing, but yet here I am in colder weather than that and it's holding up. So I'd have to say I'm pretty impressed with the result here and how everything went. Time to leave the car for 8 hours. I'll be documenting, warming it up, and we'll go from there. All right, the day is over. Time to wake the car up. Sitting on 52%. That's down 2, but I'm assuming 2% is locked out and that it's not actually gone. And it's kind of hinting towards that here by saying less available due to cold. And we're at the warmest part of the day here, minus 24 C, which is minus 11 degrees Fahrenheit. Feels like minus 36 C, so obviously there's wind and it's cold. All right, well, time to start up the car and start the preheat. We are going to keep track of how long this takes and how quick it heats up. It is now 4:31 p.m., so that's our starting time. And thanks to all the glass on the Tesla and it being sunny outside, we're actually only at minus 11 degrees inside the car, so it's looking pretty good. 2 minutes in, it's starting to blow hot here. We are at minus 7 in the cabin now, not too bad. 4 minutes in, already in the plus temperatures above freezing, so this is going pretty rapidly. Still got a rainbow of icons here, got the heating icon and the freezing icon, and yeah, it's pretty interesting to see these, but yeah, car's obviously cold. All right, so 5 minutes in, we are really heating up now, plus 10 C, this is totally comfortable. 11, it's just blowing hot air now at this point, good to go. All right, and 7 minutes in, cabin is at fully preheat. So 7 minutes on a day like today outside all day. Not too bad, folks. And still at 7 minutes in, car's fully heated up, but I have both these cold icons. So the less energy icon and the battery heating icon. So car's still working hard to warm the whole thing up. All right, 10 minutes in, freezing icon's gone, but the battery preheating icon still there. So 10 minutes in. And here on the Tessie app, it shows that we actually have 3% that's still locked out due to being cold. So should get that back as things heat up. And 4% phantom drain. That's just been my preheat drain. Kind of strange, now we're at 14 minutes and I have both the cold icons again. So now the snowflake is back along with the battery heater still being there. So a bit inconsistent because yeah, that was gone a few minutes ago. 20-minute update, snowflake is gone, battery is still heating up after 20 minutes and at 48%. And Tessie app is showing 49%, but 2% is locked out due to cold, even after 20 minutes. So slowly getting there. Down to 46%. That's a 34% loss so far, and I haven't even left work yet today. All right, well, I don't think you can do worse than I'm going to do here today. 30 minutes of preheating in the morning, 25 minutes of preheating right now. Yeah, car is beautiful. I took off my big jacket already because it's just too nice in here, but whew, 34% use so far. I only used 31% on my minus 30 degree test, but there's some important factors to keep in mind there. I started in a garage and I started the precondition on that test while plugged into a 240 volt. And so I wasn't taking off of the battery, I was taking off of the wall. Number 2 on that test was I only preconditioned for 10 minutes after work instead of 25 like I did today. I wanted to keep it as tough as possible and as realistic as possible, as well as be friendlier to my battery. All right, so my projected battery when I get home is 36%. Keeping in mind, I'm currently at 46%. So it's only thinking I will lose about 10% here on this drive home. I have to wonder if something like this morning is going to happen where it's going to be 2 or 3% off, but I guess we'll see. It is a little warmer out. It's only minus 25 degrees Celsius. So yeah, the battery by no means has had an easy time. It's been in minus 35 all night and all day here today. Quick reminder, 320 watt hours per kilometer or 515 watt hours per mile for my drive in. We'll see if my current drive does any better than that. But yeah, there's my baseline. Obviously, I don't want to go under 300 or even under 270 because 270 would be the double the use of the EPA's expected use of 137. Of course, starting out with my regen test to see if I have it immediately after leaving, and no. So now we have a big black bar, big gray bar. Absolutely no regen here right now. See if we get it later. Been about 2 minutes on the road and I'm already down to 35%. So that is just great. And the car is at 45%, so yeah, I think that projection of 35% might end up being pretty accurate here. Current drive, 316 watt hour per kilometer, so we are officially lowering the average from overnight. This is good news. I'm about to go on the freeway and then hit the full speed highway, so we'll see how this plays out. I really hope I can keep up this efficiency, maybe even get under 300 for the day. Either way, this will definitely be a record bad for me. All right, guys, definitely no regen braking yet. About halfway done time-wise, and yeah, we're still getting full-on brake pad use here. No surprise, but we'll see how it goes after the highway. That's usually where I start to get regen on these really cold days. Still sitting at 35%, and current drive, 306 watt hour per kilometer. We're on our way to get under 300. I think we can do it. Maybe even the since charge number. Wouldn't that be something? And we just went under 300 watt hours per kilometer for the current drive. So yeah, things are looking pretty good. And still projected 35%, and we're 2/3 done. This is a lot more accurate than on the drive-in, I have to say. But that being said, if this is right, I'm going to be using 45% charge here on a 67 kilometer round trip. Dropping down quick, going 114 kilometers an hour, or 70 miles an hour. So this is going pretty okay, I guess. All right, time to see if we're going to get any regen here on the highway. And we are. Look at all that regen. So the battery has warmed up adequately enough to give us regen braking here at the end of the drive. It's always at the end of my highway pole that we seem to get that regen braking back. But yeah, it's nice to see that my battery is still alive. It's still warm enough to take that little bit of charge, and it's getting a little happier. But yeah, almost home, still projecting 35%, so things are getting a little better. And current drive 281 watt hour per kilometer, but I'm accelerating right now, so this is getting a little worse, 282. But we're definitely going to keep it under 300. The real test is going to be, can the SINS charge go under 300 or not? So that is going to be an awesome test. I'm psyched to see if we can pull that off. I'm thinking 298 might be possible. I think we can do it, but we'll see in a couple minutes. So I made it back home and car did okay. So current drive, literally exactly double the EPA rating of 137 watt hour per kilometer. And I got 271, so it is what it is. I gave the car the worst case scenario. But yeah, as for SINS charge, 295, we got under 300. It's a little bit worse than the 279 that I got on the minus 30 day test. But on that day I started in the garage, that was about minus 7 degrees Celsius, so quite a bit warmer. The battery wasn't having to fight the cold all night, and so this is a pretty interesting result. But really that just shows that when you're in park, nothing counts towards that SINS charge number. That is only when you're in drive. And so all that drain we get in idle, while we're in park, preconditioning, preheating, this is not included in that. And we see the evidence of that with this number right here. Now this was at 35% right up until extremely close to my place. I'll call that one margin of error. That was super close. And the energy graph. This is what I've been excited to look at. So 12% while actually driving. You know, this is not that much worse than an average 9 or 10% that I would use on a normal winter day when it's quite a bit warmer, but still well into the negatives. And it only used about 0.5% more than projection, so that's also not too bad. Now for driving, somehow it actually almost nailed the driving prediction. This is surprising to me because usually that one is always off. Even this morning it was off a few percent. Climate saved a little bit, as normal, and only used 1.5%, interestingly enough, and battery preconditioning. So yeah, the battery preconditioning was still on while driving, so that costed a little extra. And if we look on this side, climate control, air drag, tire drag, and preconditioning due to cold weather costed 1%. Apparently my low tire pressure, I kind of doubt that considering I'm at like 44, 45 PSI. But yeah, that is an interesting reading. So not sure why that's doing that. And yeah, we had a bit of wind, of course, as always, and that costed about 0.5%, but that's a daily occurrence at this point. All right, so now we're going to look at total use here, both cost and kilowatt hours used. So overnight, when I parked the car from 11 p.m. until I started driving at 8:14 in the morning, this is including the half an hour of preconditioning and preheating the cabin. I used 10% charge, or 8.76 kilowatt hours. That's a pretty substantial number already. Now we have the stats of the drive to work. Took about half an hour. I used about 14% charge, which equaled out to 10.9 kilowatt hours used. This ended up costing me about $1.60 Canadian based on my rate. And by the way, guys, if you want to have access to this cool data, use the Tessie app. I have it linked in the description for you to use, but I highly recommend it if you're a data nerd. All right, and next up is the 8 hours of idle time while I was at work. Keep in mind it was freezing cold and unplugged during this time. This also includes the preheating and preconditioning of the battery for about 25 minutes. So this used 8% and 6.59 kilowatt hours. And lastly was the drive home. Again, took around 30 minutes. I used about 13% state of charge, and 9.31 kilowatt hours were used for the drive home, under $1.50 Canadian. Some interesting data that I got from this was 15.35 kilowatt hours was used for the preheating and idle time alone. So that's almost half my entire usage just from preheating and preconditioning, as well as probably a tiny bit of time idle. So that is actually a little bit crazy. More interesting info, the total usage for this entire test was 35.56 kilowatt hours, which equals out to $5.33 Canadian at my current electricity rate of 15 cents per kilowatt hour. This is half the cost of what my previous vehicle, a 2010 Honda Civic DXG, would have used in this test. As normally, even on a nice day, I would spend $8.78 based on my tracking, and I certainly would have been idling the car at least 20 minutes each direction here on this test on a day as cold as this. And so, given the extra strain the Civic would have had on a day like today, I think it's very safe to say it would have used 10 or even 1060, which would have been double the electricity price. So even on the worst possible scenario here for the unplugged Tesla, it still performed twice as efficient as my Honda Civic would have. And this is left outside both ways, unplugged both directions. So that is actually a very impressive result in my opinion. So in conclusion, I just used 46% of my total battery on my 2024 Tesla Model 3 long range all-wheel drive just to drive 67 kilometers or 42 miles. I definitely gave it a terrible situation by leaving it out all night at temps as cold as minus 36 C or minus 33 Fahrenheit, unplugged, preconditioning for 30 minutes on the car's battery power, driving it on that temperature, leaving it outside and unplugged all day, doing the same thing with the preconditioning and then driving it home, and using pretty much half my car's battery just to do that. Normally, this is about a 20% use for me on a cool day. Not near as cold as this, but on a cool day. But again, that's starting in a garage. So I actually can't wait to see how efficient this car does in the summer. When it's like plus 25 Celsius or 77 degrees Fahrenheit, right in that sweet zone where the car is going to be really happy. I think it'll be like 16%. I'm really curious to see that, but that's going to be wildly efficient in the summer. I definitely will be doing a plus 30 versus minus 30 degrees Celsius comparison video when that comes. So I'm really excited to film that one too. And of course, it'll be on my exact same round trip that I do every day here. So I've kind of got a perfect little loop system that's really relevant to a lot of people's daily drive. And the data here that I find is something that can be really applicable for most people, that they can kind of work into what their daily drive is too, and use the data I get to compare what their situation might be. And for my final thoughts, what do I think of how the car did here today? Honestly, I think this was pretty close to what I expected. I don't have any regrets buying the car, and temps going this extremely cold is really rare and only happens a small handful of times every single year. And of course, I'm normally going to be in the garage and plugged into my 240 volt. And so days like this are just not going to matter. It's going to be cold, but it's not going to make a difference. Normally, I would use about 10% less than I did here today. And again, I'm not doing crazy road trips and such on days like this. And so it's perfect for a normal commute. However, for you, the viewer, the person who might not have a garage or might not have a 240 volt, days like this could be a genuine concern for you, especially if you live in a climate as cold as mine here in Saskatchewan. Even if you have access to a level 1 charger and you're parked outside overnight, I think that would make the difference in just keeping that battery at least somewhat warmed up so that when you do your precondition in the morning, it's not going to absolutely burn your 10% of your battery like I saw here on my test. You're definitely not going to be gaining almost any charge. You might even lose some. I'm not really sure. That would be a good test here too, but really don't expect to gain much when it's this cold out if you did plug it in on a level 1 overnight, but it would still make a huge difference because it would just be pumping heat into that battery the entire night. However, that being said, in order to actually gain charge if you don't have a garage and you have a level 1, you would be supercharging regularly in the winter. And so depending on what your tolerance is for that, if you've got a supercharger nearby or access to some sort of level 2 or faster charger, that's up to you to decide. But for me, where I live, supercharger's 30 minutes away. I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't buy the car if I was parking it outside and using it on a level 1. I wouldn't have bought it, but that's not my situation. Even if I had the garage without the level 2, I think I would make it work, and I will be testing that in a future video on a cold day to see if the level 1 charger can keep up and to see if I can gain meaningful amount of charge here. I might even try a week in the life or something like that of just using the level 1. I think that would be a good test for a lot of people that do have the garage, that don't want to spend $2,000 Canadian or whatever it is to actually get the level 2 wired in there, the 240 volt plug. In a very near video, I will also be testing leaving the car outside on a level 1 charger all night and seeing how I do on my daily round trip of work with that one. So stay tuned for that video. That is coming up soon. If you're impressed with how the car held up and are thinking about a Tesla yourself, I've got my referral link in the description. Make sure you're using that if you're going to buy a Tesla to see what kind of discount you'll get. Right now, it's like $1,300 Canadian or $1,000 US. So make sure you use my link if you're going to be buying a Tesla anytime this year. With that, I want to thank you for watching my extreme cold test. I really hope you got some good value and good information out of this because I really put my car through some abuse for this video. I'm trying to do something unique here, and I hope that all of you that stayed till the end would leave a like, maybe subscribe for more content, and leave a comment to let me know your thoughts on how my test went, or to suggest other tests that you would like to see me do in the future. Thank you for watching Frozen Tesla, and I'll see you on the next one.